the little red button, and it says live.
Oh, jolly good. Hello, everybody. Happy Tuesday.
And yes, absolutely. Here we are once again. Welcome to TeaFlix.
Hope you're all bright-eyed and bushy-tailed.
Yep, indeed. So today we are really, really excited about the depth of knowledge that our guest has and the research that he's done for over a decade will blow your mind. I'm going to read a little bit of the deal here. So the gentleman we're going to be talking to today is Jerry Hammack. He's a recording mixing engineer. Sorry, there's a difference, and we'll find out. And he is the author of 7 books, 5 of which are in a series called The Beatles Recording Reference Manuals from 1961 to 1970. It's a 5-book series that tells the step-by-step process in which each of the band's recordings were created. The books reconstruct each song's creation, as well as detail the technical profile of each and every classic Beatles recording from that 9-year period. So though they're extensive and through extensive and fully documented research spanning over a decade, as I said, these books fill a really important gap left by all the other Beatles books published to date, as they provide a unique view into the recordings of, well, you know, we all know the most successful pop music act of all time. Jerry has analyzed over 5,400 recordings, takes, outtakes, remixes, and release versions, books, magazine articles, photos, film, and video evidence, and interviews with key engineers who worked on the sessions to filter out the noise of myth and conflicting fact to arrive at as an accurate an accounting and application of facts as is currently possible. So without further ado, ladies and gentlemen, we welcome Mr. Jerry Hammack.
Hello. Good morning.
Hello. Hi, Angie.
Thank
Hi,
you
Ruth.
so much for joining us. We're so excited.
Yeah, absolutely. My pleasure. Looking forward to talking to you both.
Thank you. And thanks also to Ken Womack for putting us in touch with each other.
You bet.
Yeah, Dr. Ken's a great guy.
He is, isn't he? Yeah.
I always forget to call him doctor because I was introduced to him in the Beatles circle, not the educational circle. So thank you for that reminder, because it is
Dr. Ken.
He's Professor Dr. Ken, I think, isn't he?
Yeah, he goes by many names, but I like Dr. Ken.
And at the end of the night at the bar at Beatlefest, he goes by, "Hey, you."
Yeah, there you go. There you go.
Well, thanks for doing this. So, what was you and I were arguing over who's going to be the first question, but I think you have the most interesting one.
Well, yes. So first of all, I'd like to, when did you first become aware of the Beatles? Were you actually born then, or were you just a baby in arms, or what?
I was a babe when the Beatles were around. I was born in 61. Yeah. And some of my earliest memories have to do with the Beatles. I was one of those little kids that would stand on the fireplace mantle with a tennis racket, playing guitar to Beatles albums. And wore them out and stared them out, absorbing the images and absorbing the music. So from my earliest musical consciousness is the Beatles.
Wow.
They've just been a part of my life for my entire life. And so that's where the awareness came. And as I came to work in audio, you can't avoid the Beatles. You can't avoid references to them.
Oh, why would you want to? Exactly.
Well,
so were you like 3 years old sitting on the carpet in front of Ed Sullivan, or did you come to them a bit later?
No, I came to them, in terms of my consciousness of them a little bit later. But not much later, probably, probably 5. I distinctly remember, Help coming out. I remember, it's probably around 60, 65. So 4 or 5, I have my own conscious memories of the Beatles. So early enough, I suppose.
It's interesting, isn't it, from a songwriter, not just an audio perspective, but from a songwriting perspective. A lot of their very early 4 on the Floor music was it was sort of innocent, childlike, naive. It was, young boys trying to sing to young girls, but it also appealed to children. There was something very memorable and kind of safe and familiar about the melodies and the beat. And even today, if you play a Beatles song for the first time to a kid as young as 2, they'll start dancing to it.
It's happy music.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was fantastic pop music, and it's well written, well constructed. I mean, great pop music. I think has that quality. It is almost immediately memorable. There's something to they call it hooky for a reason. Is it can grab onto you and hold onto you and give you something to remember, give you something to connect with, and the Beatles were masters at that, of giving us something to latch onto, to call our own, and to make our own. I think
that sense of humor and the sense of fun grabbed a lot of people too.
Yeah,
particularly in America when they first came over, because America had just gone through the awful sadness of JFK.
Yeah,
and it was just something lighthearted and silly, and everybody latched onto it.
Yeah, and I remember seeing, again, being very, very young, but they play it in the evenings every few months, maybe a couple times a year. I'd see A Hard Day's Night.
Yeah,
and A Hard Day's Night created that kind of indelible impression of these characters that went along with the Beatles.
Yeah.
So that, I think that entire package was what allowed a lot of kids that were my age to connect.
Yeah.
And obviously that was a successful pop formula, because so many bands of the era attempted to recreate that. They couldn't.
Yeah,
but they worked hard at it. And then, of course, in the US we had the blatant attempt to do that with the Monkees,
right?
Which again was successful at doing
yes,
that.
great.
Yes, yeah. I also think a part of that success was part of the marketing and the story that Davy Jones was also from up north. He was from Manchester, and so it was kind of Beatles adjacent, to Liverpool, and he had the Manchester accent like that, and he was little Davy, and he was cute, So.
Yeah, I think, again, I can only speak for myself, but anyone from England that had a heavier accent was immediately assumed to have come from Liverpool.
Yes.
It's funny, isn't it? Yeah.
That was just by default. And I guess that speaks to the impact that the Beatles made, was that we saw them that way. We saw someone from the UK. They were in music.
Yeah.
They got it from Liverpool, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah. I'm born and bred. Absolutely. Well, I'm born and bred in Liverpool, Walton, and there's 2 very famous buildings in the Walton area of Liverpool. One is the jail, and one is the maternity hospital. And when you say, "Oh, I was born in Walton," they say, "Yeah, the jail, the prison, or the hospital."
That's great.
Ange was actually born over the water. She's posh in Hoylake, which is the birthplace of Daniel Craig, aka James Bond. So she's a bit of a posh one, So
well, I can't say that I could tell by the accent. I can't say that.
Well, it's been knocked out of us, because if you're a real Scouser, people really just don't understand you. It's a really heavy accent. So at what point, so you're fascinated with the Beatles, you're 5, 6, 10, teenager. Did you ever want to play an instrument or write songs or sing, or were you just
sure. Oh, yeah. From a very early age, I was imagining songs and putting songs together and recording songs from probably when I was about 6 years old.
Good heavens.
I had a little Panasonic cassette tape player, and I would sing into it, make up songs and sing into it. And then would have periodically, my mom would hear me doing it. And if there were friends over, she'd grab it from me and go play them the song I just sang. And I'd just be like, no.
I know.
Yeah.
Not ready yet. And then I went on to become a multi-instrumentalist. I play all kinds of instruments and write and record and produce and engineer and mix and do all of those adjacent sorts of things. And yeah, and it all really stems back from this exposure to the Beatles, and I think, part of, again, as someone who's leaned toward the arts and leaned toward music, that the Beatles were self-contained, that the Beatles didn't need people to write for them. They wrote their own things. That wasn't, I don't know how fully conscious I was of that message,
Right.
but it got through to me. It told me that I could write music.
It was possible.
They can write music. I can write music.
Yes.
That leading by example. So,
I think
my whole life comes from that seed, of love of that music, and wanting to create music, to have those feelings again.
Yes.
To get those feelings and to have those feelings over and over again, which is when you're creating, you get that rush of something new and fun and
Right. I mean, I think back in those days, a lot of people we knew in Liverpool, I knew growing up, were, they had a day job, they worked for the Weights and Measures, or they did this, that, and the other, and they were in a band at night and on the weekends, and they called themselves semi-pros. And if, for heaven's sake, they get a manager or a little mini tour deal, they'd quit their job and say, I've gone pro, I've gone professional. Because I think before the Beatles, in working class post-war England, making a living, let alone making a fortune, but making a living and keeping a roof over your head from music was not anything anybody thought of unless you were going in the London Symphony Orchestra. Right? It wasn't a profession. No. You had to be a plumber or an electrician or a doctor. You weren't a drummer, for heaven's sake.
Right.
Ringo's mum used to put away £5 a week. He used to send her money, for living expenses. And she used to put away £5 whenever she could, every week or so, in a post office savings account for when it's all over. Elsie used to say, I'll have enough saved for our Richie to open a hairdressing shop, because that's what he wants to be, as a hairdresser.
She showed me once, she had this little blue book. British Post Office, a
gyro savings account for Richie when the drumming thing stops. Well, he's 83.
I'm still rocking.
Don't going to beauty school and giving people permanents now, dear. But it just wasn't a thing, was it? I want to be a musician. If you said that to your parents, they clip you around the ear and send you to college.
Yeah, that mostly still goes on. I don't think that much has changed with that. It's almost an impossible career path.
That's right.
Now again, it is.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Once again, it's probably more impossible now.
Yeah.
For many musicians, unfortunately. Yeah. But certainly, anyone who's trying to make a living in entertainment, it just seems like it's insane. There is so much competition. There's so few slots for attention that you might get. Who's gonna, who would bank on that no matter how talented you are, that's going to come true. But the Beatles weren't just talented; they were relentless.
Yep. Yeah.
And truly, with everyone I've met in the music industry, the people that get there, they've got just the way to think of it is they've got an extra gear. They're willing to engage it, because it truly to get there takes all of you. And as for myself, I know that was something I was just never willing to give. I didn't care that much about everything that went along with it. I love the role that I've been able to have, which is to help people. I make music, and it's it's succeeded to degrees, and that's great. But helping people make music, that's a blast. Helping people, when you're working with someone and they're trying to get their vision out, and you see them light up because that's what they want. It's happening. It's all happening. Yeah. That's just such a great thing to participate in. And I wouldn't trade that for, the drudgery of running around, pursuing my own, stardom.
Yeah, I don't think people realize how hard touring is. There's a great musician that we love and support in Memphis called Nick Black. And if you haven't gone to Nick Black Music, you should check him out. He is a full-time musician. But again, he gets some help, not much, but he gets some help from Make Music Memphis, because Elvis made Memphis famous. And so they want to still participate in the arts. And so the city of Memphis and the state of Tennessee have these programs. I wish more states, like Montreal has an incredible program. It helped our friend Jonas Tomelty from Montreal get on his feet and travel the world, as long as he had a big Canadian flag behind him on the stage and he was representing Canada with his art and his music. So I don't think these arts programs realize how much good they can do if they find a local musician who's really got that extra gear, but not the money to engage that gear.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think the programs understand it full well. They realize the investment that it takes to, the investment that it takes outside of the investment of, again, heart and soul and energy that it takes the artist to do it. But there's, in general, it's not a money-making proposition. No. And the economics are just horrible for musicians. But again, there are a handful every year that rise to the top because of their willingness to do what it takes.
That's right.
And also, frankly, there's a bit of luck there. Yep. It doesn't hurt if you're connected for whatever reason. None of those things hurt. Right. But when push comes to shove and you have that opportunity in front of the audience, when you're put there, if you don't have something that connects at an emotional level, all the rest of that stuff doesn't matter. Right. Even the hustle doesn't matter so much. So there's a whole lot of things that have to really line up, and if they happen to, then you, my friend, might have a career in music.
Yes, that's right.
At what point did you think about starting to write a book?
Your first book.
Oh goodness. Well, as I mentioned a little bit earlier, when you're doing this work, the Beatles are ever present. And when I would be producing other artists or engineering sessions, the Beatles come up, and they would and a conversation would go something like this: like, we're going to record bass today, and the bass player or whoever is the spokesman for the band would say, "Hey Jerry, on this track, we really want that pepper sound. We really want that pepper bass. Can you get me that?" And when you're providing services in this industry, the answer, if you can imagine, is always yes.
Yes.
Yes, I can.
Yeah.
I can, sure,
yes,
I can.
First and worry about it later.
And then you scramble.
Yeah.
Of like, okay, what made that sound the way it sounds? So not only, for me, just because of the way my mind works, it's not only getting it to line up tonally, but it's understanding what went into that tone. And so I would, if I was lucky enough to get a little bit of lead time on that, then I'd scramble back and do some research and be like, oh, okay, let me see. He was using the basement head. Okay. And he was doing through a Vox T60 cab, and that, what were they miking that with? Oh, C12 and a STC 4038. Were they aligned? Oh, okay. Probably. Yeah. It sounds like that. And then it's going into I would like do the whole signal chain, kind of like get it all figured out. And then the next day I look like I'm the rock star, right? Oh, here's your Beatle, here's your bass sound.
Wow.
That would come up all the time. And I happened to have some time on my hands, and I thought it'd be kind of cool to knock out some of the basics of this stuff so I don't have to scramble when this comes up again.
Yes.
Make a cheat sheet.
So I started doing that and started collecting the data. And then I thought, the next foolish thought was, it'd be kind of cool to do this for all their sessions, wouldn't it? For all their sessions. And I thought to find it. Well, I found that I couldn't find it because it wasn't there.
Wow.
And so I slowly started tracking down the resources that would point me and the people that pointed me in the right direction to be able to document all of this. and I assembled that, and then it came, and then the question came, again, well, how did they really record those songs? Because was a lot of speculation and a very incomplete history.
Yeah.
And so that was using that information. And the next thing I did was to do the research that allowed me to reassemble the songs.
Gosh.
Wow.
And I did that on a from the first take to the remix that we all get to hear and love and enjoy, and did it for and I did it on a song by song basis, not whole sessions where there's multiple songs going on.
Wow.
But allowing, because when I look at it, like if I'm doing this, I'm thinking, if I'm doing this as an artist, I don't care. I don't care what they did on I Am the Walrus if I'm trying to get the sound for Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band, right?
Yeah.
So don't tell me about that one. I want to know about that one. And so I started putting it together in a way that allowed people to take the song that they love,
Yeah.
and see how and read about how it emerged from the first take, how the song was built with overdubs, the work that they did, the decisions that they made that got it to the mix.
God.
And I did that for every song in their original core catalog.
Well,
Good
you're like
grief.
a surgeon of songs, aren't you?
Well,
Searching the songs.
it is kind of like.
Are you available for marketing?
Oh, yes, we are. What we do.
Yeah, it was both. It worked both ways. In some cases, I was able to assemble things and find the missing pieces and fill the gaps. In some cases, I had to deconstruct things. I had to work from the finished track and back out of it based off of the audio that I had available, and knowing that if this was recorded on X date and this was recorded on Y date, what changed between these things, and able to extract those sorts of things. I don't make any claims in my books for knowledge that I don't have. If it's because there are facts about their work that just aren't knowable, and a lot of people get frustrated. They'll want to know. They'll want me to answer a question that cannot be answered.
Yeah.
And I'm not. I got a big ego, but I don't got such a big ego that I'm going to claim to know what can't be known about the work that they did.
Yeah.
And I make that really clear. Really clear in the books.
I think John Lennon sort of said that too, isn't it? Didn't he? There's nothing you can say that can't be said, nothing you can know that can't be known.
Yeah.
I'm paraphrasing. But yeah.
No,
So,
but there are things you can't know.
yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's true. But what I'm saying is you don't seem like the kind of guy who's going to take a wild ass guess.
No, because as I was doing this work, I encountered a lot of wild ass guesses.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And like there was one book that I read. I won't name the title, but they basically just filled in the blanks by speculation, and it was like there were only ever 4 people that worked on the sessions, and they were just the Beatles. So there's a violin part on "Don't Pass Me By." That's George.
Okay.
No, it's not.
How do we know?
Because they hired a fiddler, and we know his name. So, but that's but again, there was so much of that they came up against. So I recognized that up to the point that Mark Lewison published his recording sessions book in 1988, there's just very little authoritative information that you can get about the work that was done. So a lot of it could just be discounted in the research.
Right.
But starting in '88, the quality of the scholarship started to improve, and by the time I'm working on it, there is again enough information that I could assemble these narratives in a way that was honest to the narrative. And all my books are completely documented. So there's extensive bibliographies. If you want to go deeper, or you want to know like, well, how does he know that? it's right there. It'll tell you this is the source. Here's the page that you read to find where I had tracked that down, and where and where there isn't an additional source, it's because there was nothing there, and that's the research that I did to fill in that gap.
So did you ever get to talk to Jeff Emmerich or Glyn Johns or any of the, the people?
I was able to interact with Ken Scott, with Richard Langham.
Yep.
Had some back and forth with Peter Vince, with Chris Thomas. So a handful of those guys, and with them, what I really learned about the way that the Beatles worked was that how they created this work was not as difficult as it could be, but as easily as they could get it done.
Okay.
And this is something when I'm talking to anybody about making music, I say no one doing this for a living does anything they don't need to do. It's just not economical to do it. You don't approach this work being like, I'm going to record that organ. What's the most difficult way I could possibly record that organ?
Exactly.
Right.
You don't do it. So they would use microphones, for instance, that you might not expect. They'd use these cheap AKG microphones to record almost everything. And people would be like, well, they had those, excuse me.
Neumann's. That's right. Yeah. With Abbey Road Studios, they would have had access to almost anything, right?
Oh, they had great mic blocker. But yeah, you got a Neumann. Why would you use that AKG D19? And the answer? Because it was plugged in.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, it sounds about right. It sounds very.
So so I grab it and I put it in front of what I want to record, and I record, and I'm done. I don't listen to that track and go, that organ would have sounded a lot better if they would have used the U47 on it. No one does that.
Right.
No one does that.
It's wonderful.
And feel is as much of the Beatles as perfection at any level.
Right.
An example I often give is, excuse me, I'm getting over pneumonia, so cough drop.
God bless.
No.
Thank you. An example I often give is Lucy in the Sky with Diamonds. There's an overdub on that song that we have access to that is George on lead guitar and Paul on bass.
Okay.
And he's doing the chorus lead guitar part. Bum bum ba dum bum bum ba dum ba dum ba dum, right? Doing that little bit. If you listen to that in isolation, George flubs the notes like half the time. Paul's just flailing away on the bass, and it's kind of in the pocket and kind of not in the pocket. but you put it in context of the song.
Yeah.
And it's magic.
It's funny, isn't it?
And George Martin's job as a producer was to hear all that going on and going, yeah, that works.
Yeah.
Keep that works. Next.
Yeah, because don't forget, for those watching who aren't technically minded, they didn't have an unlimited number of tracks in those days. I mean, we started with 2-track, 4-track, 8-track, and then 16.
Well, the Beatles didn't even work on 16-track. They peaked at 8-track.
Yeah.
But the way that they used it was that when they ran out of tape, they would take that tape and they would create a mix of it and send it to another tape.
Yep.
And then that other tape had a few open tracks on it. They'd fill those up. If they filled all that up, then they go to another tape. And because of the quality of the audio tape, the quality of the gear they were using, we don't hear a huge decay in the sound quality because of those things. But that's the way that they got beyond the limitations. And all art is about working with limitations.
Yeah.
The Beatles throughout their career, even when they were able to afford to do more,
right,
or to afford to do things in a finer manner. Let's say Beatles, we could just record the bass and the drums on this, and then we'll do the guitars later. And no, they didn't do that. They recorded backing tracks the majority of the time as a band.
Yep.
And they recorded overdubs together.
Yep.
Yeah.
So someone's over there shaking a tambourine, someone's over here with maracas, and I got a backing vocal that's being sung.
Yeah.
And they would record those things together because they were just getting the job done.
Yeah.
Right. Well, they wanted to go to the pub, have lunch, and get home to their dogs and wives and kids, and
Well, their work ethic is, by today's standard, is absolutely ridiculous. So they were contracted to do 2 albums, which UK albums were 14 songs on a UK album. 2 albums, so there's 28 songs plus 2 singles, which are another 4 songs.
Yeah.
So now we're up to 32 songs that they have to record. And they have to do that write and record. They have to do that every year under their agreement.
I mean, it's almost indentured servitude, isn't it? Really, when you think about it.
Yeah, and they were making a lot of money too. They're under their first recording contracts. $1 million seller would make them about on the record royalties. Just the recording piece of it would make them like $700 a piece.
That's it.
Oh,
We're almost back to Spotify rates, aren't we?
Spotify is truly worse.
Yeah.
But
don't rent your music, kids. Buy your music. I say it every week.
Buy your music.
Don't rent it. Wow, they would only make 700 quid if they had a million seller. That was under their original agreement, under their original contract. They were signed to Dick James Music, who had half the publishing or all the publishing. So
now the publishing's different, but now, which is, and publishing's where it's at. That's the thing. It's so it's publishing, and back in the day, publishing mechanical rights for when they manufacture the units, and performance rights when they play the songs. Yeah. That's where they made the money.
Right.
So but it wasn't in the million seller thing. It was everything around that they made the money. And of course, merchandise and all that sort of stuff.
Right. I was on a phone call. I was about 12 or 13, and Michael Jackson had taken a fancy to Linda's daughter, Paul's stepdaughter, Heather C. McCartney. And so if I was about 13, Heather would have been about 11. Michael was probably 15, and we were in Liverpool, and Michael would call at night from Encino and talk to Heather for an hour and a half, 2 hours on the phone, and hang out on the phone with this little girl. And Paul and Linda and Angie, my dad, thought, why is a 15-year-old calling an 11-year-old and talking for 2 hours? What are they talking about? We better have someone listen in. So I would, part of my pocket money was I would just hang on the phone extension and listen and make sure that he's not inviting her to, water skiing in Long Beach or something. And one night, Michael asked a question. He said, is your dad home? I'd like to talk to him. And Heather was upstairs on the phone, and she called down, Dad, are you home? Michael's got a question. And so I'm still on the extension. I'm doing maths homework, something terribly boring. And again, I'm paraphrasing, but this conversation between Paul and Michael Jackson wound up saying, well, Paul gave him the advice, if you really want to make more than $40 a week from Joe Jackson Entertainment, which is all Michael was making for being in the Jackson 5, was $40 a week. He said, I'll give you one good piece of advice, Michael, buy publishing. That's where it's at. Well, Michael wound up owning the Beatles catalog. And I was on the phone call. I'll never forget that. But then, of course, Paul took his own advice as well and built up MPL. And in fact, one of our clients, Nick Marichal, put out a cover last week of Ghost Riders in the Sky. So I had to go and get a cover song license for the mechanicals and the downloads and stuff. And I get onto ASCAP and BMI, and I'm doing the research. Who is the publisher? Who owns the copyright for Ghost Riders in the Sky? Well,
MPL?
None other than Paul McCartney. So, he took his own advice.
Yeah, I thought, the fact that Michael Jackson bought out at the time bought out the Beatles publishing, kind of not out from under them, but bought it out. Well, it's well known. Yeah. I thought it was kind of hilarious in in the Get Back documentary that was out on Amazon, that there's a scene dedicated to Dick James coming in and talking with Paul about the publishing that he had just bought for Paul.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
Buying other people's catalogs.
Right.
Paul buying other people's catalogs.
Well, I think
I love that.
Paul owns the Maple Leaf
forever, doesn't he? Own the publishing
national
on the
anthem,
Canadian
doesn't he?
national anthem. So
Well,
I think he
he
did
did.
at one point.
And every time I sing it, I throw a penny his way.
Yes,
Yeah.
and every time a Canadian plays hockey, an angel gets its wings.
There you go. There you go.
Yeah.
So you went on to write, I mean, you've written 7 books, but you went on to write a series of 5 of these books. I guess it was to be sort of like, once you'd done the first one, you knew you couldn't stop, right?
Well, I had actually gathered and parsed and kind of normalized the data for all of them before I wrote the first one.
Mm.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I had done 8 years of research before the first book came out.
Gee, Louise.
So I had so it was always my intent that I would cover the entire catalog. Now figuring out the way that the book would work the best for the greatest number of people was a big challenge.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And I got some, and I was, I was about 8 years into it, and I was drafting the first book, and I was really close with it. And I was sitting around one night, and I said to my wife, I was like, "Oh, I'm just so sick of this. I want to get a book out. I want to get a book out." And I said, "I'm going to publish it." And she looked at me and she said, "Well, is that the book that you really want to do?"
Oh,
And I said, "Well, what do you mean?" She said, "Well, you get one chance to do the book the way that you want to do it." She goes, "After you've done it a certain way, the rest of them will follow that way. So is this the book that you really want to put out?" And I said, "Well, it would be nice if it had diagrams, and it would be really nice if I was able to have the story be told in one way, but then give access to every single session that was there, all the technical data that I had gathered that was the foundation of this. That would be really cool." And she said, "Well, how long is it going to take you to write it that way?" And I said, "I don't know, another 6 months."
mhm.
And she said, "You worked on this 8 years. Do you think you got 6 months?"
Right.
And I just stopped and followed her sage advice.
Good girl.
And that's how the books came out. So there's a narrative about for each song that leads you through, again, that tale of first take to final remix. There are diagrams that highlight the state of the construction of the song via the audio tapes, at all the milestones, the major milestones, like what was in the backing track, what was in the overdubs they did, what was in the tape reductions they did, how did those get overdubs, what's the mix look like. So literally you can put on a Beatles record, put on headphones, look at the diagrams in my book, and you'll hear them in an entirely different way.
Fantastic.
And then every single session then for who worked on it, what work was done on it, what was the gear involved from the studio perspective, what was the gear involved from the Beatles perspective, and where the history was in conflict. Like Lewison says this, but Howlett says that, but Womack says this, right?
Yep.
I went through all of those conflicts and sorted them out.
God.
And if you can't sort them out, then I make note of that, and I present in the notes to this those arguments that different authors, besides myself, have made. If I've looked at that and come to a completely different conclusion, I give the justification for the conclusion.
Yep.
And those were the books that I wanted to write. When I got to that point, when she asked me that question, what came to my head was, I want to write the books that no one needs to write again.
Yep. Be done with it.
I want to put this to bed.
Period. The end. Yeah.
Yeah. And now to that end, my commitment to these books is ongoing. When when a new fact comes up that I didn't have when I wrote them, or I'm challenged on something that someone's got a better source than I had, and I'm challenged on it, and I always say, I gave you chapter and verse, you got to give me chapter and verse. It can't be. I heard from a guy that Lennon played this when he did that. No, that won't work.
Right.
But when I hear something or gain information that is, again, authoritative,
right,
then I update the books.
Wow.
So I'll update the books, and I make freely available to anybody who's bought the books. I make that update freely available to anyone that's bought the books.
It's no wonder you get such wonderful reviews. I started reading them yesterday, and I was just gobsmacked. You get terrific reviews.
No,
Your readers really appreciate what's got them. Yeah,
I appreciate all of that. I just, I really tried to look at this through the lens of a fan myself. Like the books that I write are books that I want to read, and the way that I try to treat the people that have bought my books, the consumers of my books, is the way that I would like to be treated. Like every time I do an update, I don't want if someone was doing an update to their books and told me, yeah, and for another $35 you can have it,
right,
I'd be like,
yeah.
So I don't want to be that guy. You spent your money on me. I'm going to keep this stuff up because that's just what I do. And if you've bought them, I post free on the book's website those updates in the form of PDF. Here's the changes that have been made since the last version of the book. Download it free. Just throw it in your book, and you'll
it's know. That kind of integrity, Jerry, that you're twice nominated for excellence in historical recorded sound by the Association for Recorded Sound Collections, ARSC. And your books are now part of the permanent collection of the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, the library, and the archives. And it's because of that kind of passion and commitment.
Yes.
And the the satisfaction you're able to give your curious reader family that you are who you are, and you're successful, and we wish you many more years of many more book sales.
Oh, thank you very much.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I like being in the Hall of Fame. That makes me happy.
That would make me very happy too.
Yeah.
I haven't done any. I've done infamous things, but nothing famous yet. So as far as your day-to-day now, you're obviously still very active in the studio. Are you recording projects and mixing them, or you just prefer to mix these days? What's your?
I mix more than anything now. I still produce, but the budgets aren't really there for that for independent artists right now. But I produce when I get a chance, and I always love it. Always helping people get the most out of their music. And mixing is another great way to participate and help people, really realize the vision of their songs.
Yeah.
And I'm continuing to write. I'm working on a project right now, a multi-book project with Robert Rodriguez, great Chicago Beatles author and expert. He has the Something About the Beatles podcast, and we've been working on a book series. The first of them is going to be coming out hopefully for Christmas. It's called the series is called Ribbons of Rust, referring to audio tape. And the first book is basically going to cover the prehistory and the earliest recordings of the Beatles. Wow. Really, that book is turning out super cool. Robert's just a fantastic historian, really able to bring the context of the Beatles story together, and it's all still centered all around the recordings, because that's what the Beatles were about. The Beatles, the Beatles did perform live because that was part of the gig. That's what you did. But what they loved to do was record,
in the studio.
be in the studio. So,
well, we'd
so-
love to have Robert. We'd love to have Robert come on and have a cup of tea with us one day if he would be agreeable. I'd love to hear more about.
he's a terrific guy and so smart, so smart.
Please do extend.
Put in a good word.
Put in a good word for us.
Yes.
Yes,
I will, for sure.
Have we passed the audition, as they say?
Yeah.
So our viewers will see the best way to get in touch with you. We've got 2 URLs streaming across the bottom. So there's obviously jerryhammack.com, and then there's also the longer one, which is the Beatles. It's coming up, so I'll read it out loud. Well, you can tell the kids what it is. It's
Beatles Recording Reference Manuals.com.
There we go.
Because I wanted the longest URL possible for people.
I think you got that. There it goes, right across the screen. Take a screenshot now.
Worked hard on it.
They make excellent. Holiday time is coming, and they make excellent gifts for any self-respecting Beatle fan. So my husband Martin is asking, is it limerick time? Indeed it is, my darling.
Yes.
He's running the desk upstairs. So you may not know, Jerry, but for our esteemed guests, Angie is known as the limerick lady. She's got a book out called Mrs. McCartney's Liverpool Limerick.
Oh, that's fantastic.
And other random Irish haikus.
That's great.
Even got a fan letter from Queen Camilla in London for the book.
Oh, I love it.
We're hoping she makes it onto the Grammy ballot for her audiobook this year. So if there are any Grammy voters watching, spoken word poetry. And so we always close out with a silly little limerick just to say thank you for your time. We know how busy you are. And everybody will, find you on socials and get over to your websites.
And this will be on YouTube later.
This will be on YouTube later on if you missed it on Facebook.
Yeah.
And so if you're ready, if you're sitting comfortably, then we'll begin.
1, 2, 3.
Our guest for today was dear Jerry, whose books are both sharp and so merry. With a fader in hand, mixing sounds for the band. His talent is so legendary.
Ta-da!
Oh, thank you so much.
There you go. I'm sorry.
That's fantastic. No, laughter is the best expectorant. Thank you very much.
Yes,
that's absolutely right. Have a fab day. So thank you for spending time with us.
Oh, thank you so much.
Check out Jerry and his fabulous books at jerryhammack.com. And we will see you kids next week. And all of a sudden, we'll see you soon. Thanks, Jerry.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye now.